All right, good afternoon, everyone. I hope and welcome to the fourth concurrent session of the day, the 5 Ws of Math Corequisites. Our presenter today is Emily Carpenter from Seminole State College. Emily Carpenter has been an educator for 20 years with experience ranging from early childhood education to higher education. Most recently, she has had the privilege of teaching various math pathways at Seminole State College in rural Oklahoma, where she also serves as the transitional math coordinator. With a master's degree from Oklahoma State University in special education, she is passionate about exciting transition to corequisite classes as SSC continues to strive to provide rigor yet equity in their mathematics courses. If you have any questions for the presenters during the session, please feel free to enter those into the Q&A section at the bottom of the Zoom room screen, and we will address them at the end of the talk. On that note, I'm going to hand it over to our presenter.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am going to go on and get my screen up and sharing. Hopefully you guys, we have beautiful weather here in Oklahoma, so hopefully you guys are having some beautiful weather as well. We are ending spring break, so I'm not sure we're kind of all over the place in Oklahoma this semester. Some schools are beginning spring break, some are ending spring break, some don't have a spring break. So it's been a little bit wonky, as so many things have been, but I'm super excited to be here and talk to you a little bit about coreqs, a little bit about pathways, a little bit about how we utilize Hawks. I can talk obviously about any of those aspects for more than 45 minutes. And so feel free to just pop questions into Q&A, and I would love to chat. I'll also show my email at the end, and you're more than welcome to email me or any of my colleagues if you have specific questions, or call, and I'd love to talk to you about what's happening and ideas, or if you have ideas. I even will share some questions I have along the way as we are still learning and adjusting and adapting. So who we are, and I'm just one part of kind of the team here that we have some other instructors, but as far as implementing coreqs, I represent one of the three of us. And so we have Dr. Goller, Melissa Bryant, and we've actually done a few webinars for Hawks before. And so maybe you've seen all three of us, or yeah. But I'll share all of our information at the end, and we all kind of represent different aspects of this. And so I come in as the transitional ed, working with developmental students at risk. That's really my heart. Dr. Goller has been very important in our state as we've moved to pathways, and so that's really her expertise. And then Melissa Bryant has actually been the one that's piloted several of these classes, and so I'm just the one here today. So I just wanted to give credit where credit is due. But this is just some data from fall of 2018. I'm sure your institutions are the same. All of our data is a little bit delayed this year, so trying to get updated information for even at our institution or at the state level has been just absolutely nuts. So I apologize if some of my data is a little bit outdated. It is the best that we can do in a manage your expectations type of year and semester. But just to give you just a glimpse of what we are, we're a rural school in Oklahoma, a two-year college, about 1,500 students. And we do have quite a few non-traditional students. You see there it says 75% under 20, although not necessarily traditional. 45% of students have an ACT score of 10 to 19 if they even took the ACT. And we are anywhere from 65 to 75% developmental or coming into math, from math in particular. So I'm going to talk to you about math, but I also have I will also talk a little bit about English and talk to you about how that looks in our per institution as well. And so we actually moved in the fall of 2017. We moved to 4 different math pathways, and then actually went to full coreq model too. And so it was a bit of a just pull off the band-aid. We knew these were best practices. Our state was moving towards these pathways. And so we just decided if we were going to do it, we were just going to go wholeheartedly into it. And it was quite an exciting semester, but it worked out well. So kind of in the past, just very quickly, so you know, we had different types of strategies, well, not strategies, but really kind of plans in place depending on the semester. And I'm not going to go over all of those because it kind of changed over the last 10 years. But we had some prerequisites, basic math, or basic algebra and intermediate algebra. And we had actually put a co-rec in place starting a few years before this, I think it's 2015, and had kind of played around with that to see, but we actually selected the students that went into that college algebra co-rec. So a little bit different than what we have going now, but we did have that model in place. And so we basically kind of just looked at, okay, this is what we have. It wasn't working. I have some data here in just a bit. And then we knew that the structure of these math pathways was where our state was going. We knew it was going to be state mandated very soon. And so we had already moved into providing an elementary stat pathway. And of course, we had the quantitative reasoning, which was our, non-STEM major math. And then we actually split college algebra. And so you see that over there, the 1523 and 1513. And I just put the different majors underneath there so you kind of know what the different, as far as an advising aspect, or the different classes that these, or the different degree plans that these classes are showing up on. But we renamed college algebra to Pre-Calc. Kind of purposely. So it took away that stigma of everyone takes college algebra and that's what my mama took and that's what I should take. And that's what my high school counselor, without even looking, is saying I should take. And so we named them Pre-Calc. So they knew that they were either, they were calc bound, that was the implication there. And whether it's the Pre-Calc, the 1523 is actually a math functions class. And we actually use the college algebra text for that class because it has a little bit more application types of problems, but we really prepare students for business calc coming out of that class. And then our biology majors take that too. And some of those go on and take our regular Calc 1, depending on where they're transferring to. And then we had our 1513, which was our traditional college algebra, and that really became our STEM. We used the Pre-Calc text, the Hawks Pre-Calc text for that. And that was really, our instructors really like that because they've been able to kind of bump up the rigor in that class, understanding that those students are all calc bound and for the most part, engineering, computer science majors or secondary math emphasis and physics major. And so they really like teaching that class because they can really make it what it probably originally should have been. So that was kind of our move to the different pathways. This is just kind of shows you. And if you want any of this, I'll have my, you'll be able to access this PowerPoint, and I can definitely talk to you about the different pieces of this if you're interested in any of this. But just very quickly, so you see, these are our placement cut scores, and we do use the ACT. We actually use a rubric now that includes GPA, which is a whole different conversation on placement, and I think will continue to be a conversation over the next couple of semesters as we have students not taking the ACT. And of course, we have virtual students, and GPA can even be argued as questionable at this point. So, like I said, different discussion for a different day. But so and I'll kind of backtrack a little bit here. So we went a full co-rec model, and then we moved and we actually backstepped just a second, and we did decide to go in and offer one section of basic algebra. And so you see that this Math 0104, I don't have my stylus, but the Math 0104 is our basic algebra. And we really just use that if students have, if they have a below a 15 on their ACT, or if they score, that elementary algebra is our departmental test. But basically, it's just if they're going into one of those pre-calcs. So for our stat and quantitative reasoning, everybody, no matter what their ACT scores, will be placed in the pathway with the co-rec. And so we really just keep that basic algebra. So it's really algebra based for those pre-calc students. And we just offer it in the fall only. And it's really, a lot of times it's for students that want to take it. So like I said, I'll talk a little bit more about some of these slides kind of overlap a little bit, but this is kind of our timeline. And so you see that our state in the fall of 18 did implement multiple pathways. And so we were just aligning with that a little bit ahead of the game. Fall of 2017, we did go full co-rec. And then, like I said, we added that one section of basic algebra in spring of 2018, and then decided to offer it only in the fall. So it's on our schedule. Students can choose to take it if they want, because we do have some students that say, hey, I haven't been in a math class in 15 years. I would feel better about taking it. Or if we do have students that are hitting their ACT at 11 or 12, then they may need that extra semester in basic algebra. But we kind of purposely, we have very few students. I mean, I think she usually averages like 20-ish students in that class. So the rest of our students are going into a full co-rec model. And that just has seemed to be the best fit for us. And can argue that a lot of different ways, but that seems to work for us. And that seems to work for advising. Advising really wanted to have that basic algebra still on there. So so the issues, and like I said, a couple of years ago, we were kind of talking about why co-recs, but now this is such a nationwide discussion. I just got finished listening to a complete College America webinar about co-recs and how they're doing in California. So I don't know if I need to spend that much time talking about why do we do co-recs, but they're obvious issues. Students weren't graduating because they weren't getting through with math, several different semesters. Then at our institution, they can't take their science classes until they cleared their math deficiency or are co-enrolled. And so if they're taking a co-rec, then they're able to actually go on and take their biology class while they're taking their math class. So especially for our STEM majors, it's not adding on semesters onto their degree plan. And then the argument for the pathways, they're not being placed in relevant math classes because most four-year institutions required college algebra. And so when our state then moved to this model, that really helped us, obviously, because then we were able to, they were recognizing our math functions, which is our 1523 class, and they were recognizing our stat pathway. So we knew that was best practice. We knew that we needed to put students in relevant math classes and prepare them for their future career and their courses they were going to take along their degree plan. And that's very difficult to do in a one-size-fits-all college algebra course. But having that state mandate definitely helped and getting us all aligned. So there's been some exciting stuff going on in Oklahoma. Not just tornadoes happen here. So we've had some fun stuff going on in education the last couple of years. So before, remember that I said that we started this endeavor, if you will, fall of 2017. So fall of 2016, you can see we were getting students through college level of math in one semester at about 35% rate. So it was not great. And that was even with fall of 2015 is when we put in one of the co-rec classes and just kind of played around with it. Had a section of that and had actually kind of expanded that, had a couple sections of that. So we had played around with what a co-rec looked like, but we were, like I said, we were still choosing the students that went into that. They basically were coming out of basic algebra and we let them skip intermediate algebra if they had, great attendance and an A, and there was all that, like a little rubric thing. So not really the same type of scenario as a full co-rec model. So definitely changed that in fall of 2017. I'm going to go and skip through a couple of these because I've already talked about them. So some of the things as we were looking at the future and we still continue to look at the future is our K-12 schools trying to make sure our counselors, math teachers, administration, I think we finally kind of had the word out about math pathways and they understand that students really need to come to us. That's an advising, also with our advisors, that's my second bullet there, really advising students well, not that they have to choose like a major and have this like amazing life plan, but they do need to at least have that kind of meta major type of feel. You saw those 4 pathways. And we don't have a lot of students. We actually ran some data after the first year to see if like they were, if they changed pathways a lot and they were having to retake math classes, and that was a very low percentage. And so that was encouraging that typically if they're changing a major, they're staying within that meta major. They're staying within that pathway, they're staying within that interest. Maybe it's sociology to psychology and, those types of things. And so, but definitely from an advising standpoint, things that are out of our control is making sure that students are coming in and they're understanding that, if they do change their major, then they could be required to take another, if you do go from psychology to engineering, then you may have to take another math class. That this math class is not one size fits all. And we do really try to make sure that those classes are applicable and are preparing you for your degree field. And so make it a positive thing, but make sure that students are well aware of that and have spent some time thinking about that. Scheduling has also been and continues to be, if you guys have some good ideas about this, continues to be a difficulty trying to figure out, when you are just running college algebra, how many college algebra sections you need and how many adjuncts you need. And the scheduling then, when we moved into these different pathways, trying to take, fall of this data versus fall of this data, how many stat classes will we need, how many quantitative reasoning, having to do that projection. And then it requires some adjusting. And then you add in the corecs into that. And so we do limits, or our corecs are called special topics. And so you'll see that in some of the slides. And so our special topics are limited to 22 students. And so we really try to create that differentiated type of feel between developmental, really trying to hit that 50-50 mark, and it doesn't always do it. I've got a quantitative reasoning class this semester that is pretty much all developmental. But really in a perfect world, we would have half and half students, where we would have half developmental and half transitional, and when that does happen, half developmental and half that didn't need that remediation. And when we do hit that, it's really, really nice. But obviously that can be difficult. And so capping those special topics classes really, really helped, because it does force any over enrollment to be students that are not developmental. And then obviously if you're teaching that class, then it helps a lot too. So, and then we've just kind of jumped into online classes now, developing all these courses online, which we have all 4 pathways online now, all with online corecs. And that was something that we kind of had in the works anyways, luckily. And then of course, COVID happened. And so we very quickly just kind of jumped in with what we had. And I'm going to talk specifically nuts and bolts of that in a little bit. So we did move into a lot more problem-based learning, and which we love the Hawks, all of the different projects that go with all the different text. I utilize those for all of my courses. One of the aspects of Hawks that we really liked is that we didn't have to reinvent this wheel, that they had these problems or these projects that were already there that we could utilize in class in different ways. And so it's been super fun, and whether it's either in the different pathways, because we could really prepare students then more interest-based or more towards what they're going to be doing in future classes, and then also in our corecs, it gives the opportunity for students to, we kind of have this flipped classroom approach in our corecs because they've already received an instruction. And so it really gives the correct teachers an opportunity to give students, these open tasks, or just work on their inquiry, work on their critical thinking, which is something that is lacking in most of our at-risk students. So Okay, so let's talk about, this is typically the part that everybody's interested in, because I think everyone's heard about coreqs at this point. You're either moving to coreqs, you're thinking about moving to coreqs, or you have this robust program in place. So would like to spend the most of the time talking about this. And then, like I said, feel free to hop in with questions, please. So what does the coreq actually look like? So I'll talk face-to-face versus online, and obviously now we have this blended aspect too. So I'll try to kind of cover all of those. So for face-to-face, it's in a computer lab, and we are all aligned. We use Hawks Learning for all 4 of our pathways, and so we use the viewing life mathematically text for our quantitative reasoning. We use the beginning stat text for our stat course, and then 1523, which is our math functions, or pre-calc for business bio, we use college algebra. And then we use the pre-calc text for our 1513, which was our original college algebra, that now is our pre-calc basically for STEM. So we've got the 4 different pathways, 4 different Hawks programs going on, all with integrated review. And so we typically schedule, speaking of scheduling, we typically schedule the coreq. Really, we love to schedule it right after the credit bearing. And so students just immediately go from the traditional credit bearing course, and they move to, we have several computer labs on campus, and that is where these classes are scheduled. And students, so what that looks like is students typically working on their assignments, working in small groups, sometimes individually, sometimes together. The integrated reviews are utilized a little bit different by all of us as instructors, use them a little bit differently. But sometimes this class time looks like going to, having a small group and saying, okay, well, who understood, rate of change that she just talked about, or I just talked about. Sometimes it's me teaching my own coreq, which is beautiful. That's like the best case scenario. And you want to talk about introspective as an instructor, that if you get to go work then directly with those students that just received instruction from you. But we have some adjuncts that also, I have another adjunct that I work with quite closely, and she's teaching all my coreqs this semester because of scheduling. And that's what I always tease, that, it's, if you didn't get it from me, then you're going to get it from Miss Hauser, because we just, our minds think different ways. So you could probably argue that either way. But I have been able to teach my own coreqs, and it is interesting. It made me a better instructor walking into that classroom and realizing, okay, well, I didn't do a great job explaining this, or I did do a great job explaining this, and this is what I maybe should have said, and this is how I could have done it different. It's just a really great reflective practice. But a lot of times those coreqs look like students coming in, working independently on certifying on their Hawks software, on the credit bearing. I may just pull them and say, like, hey, who needs some extra help on that? Want me to explain it again? What about, let's do a couple examples, and sometimes I'll pull up just the Hawks practice on the board, and we'll annotate over and work problems. Sometimes I'll have a project, or, like I was talking about problem-based learning that we do, that I know will kind of deepen the learning, or I know will kind of activate some prior knowledge that I know that I need them to have. As far as the integrated reviews go, a lot of our instructors assign those. And so, for instance, and it's that remediation kind of right in time type of feel. So if they know that the instructor is going to be working on factoring on Friday, then on Wednesday, then they're going to do the integrated review on factoring. And so I actually, for my face-to-face, I choose an integrated review for them to do based off of what I know, what we're moving to. For my online, I actually let them self-select their integrated reviews. And so online coreq, I'm going to talk about that in just a little bit. But as far as the integrated reviews go, for that course, I have them choose 16 total for the semester. So that ends up being 1 per week. And I talk over and over again, little video clips about how that, like, hey, this is your opportunity to fill holes, or to make sure that you have these skills that we're going to need later on. I do recommend some. I'll say like, hey, this week, if you're not sure what integrated reviews you want to do, here's a few that you might find helpful. But I let them self-select those. And what I have found, for the most part, I am sure I have some students that go in there and just do the easiest ones possible and pop off their 16. But I have found overall that I actually do quite a bit of tutoring on those integrated reviews in my online co-rec. And I don't know how I would do that, how I would, without knowing those students, personally, like I get to know them face to face, I don't know how I would select those integrated reviews. And of course, I could diagnostic test them out. And there are, I know Hawks has some amazing ways to do that, but I kind of like the self-selection because it makes them be pretty introspective. And we talk about, hey, there's no shame. If you don't know how to do this, math's a set of skills. Let's bump up that skill, make sure you got it. Because you're probably going to see this in your physics class. And so let's make sure that you have this solid before you move on. And someone's going to assume that since you have a college level math class on your transcript, that you have college level math skills. And so usually after that kind of, thought, they're pretty good about choosing their own. So not everybody does it like that, but that's just my personal way of doing it. Who teaches the co-rec? I already talked a little bit about this. We really try, we're small and it's easier to schedule. We really try to keep the co-rec with the instructor that's teaching the credit bearing. Like I said, sometimes that doesn't work out, and we do have some adjuncts that work quite well with us that do like to teach the co-recs too. So it really, really depends. But kind of just that structure of they go, if it's a Monday, Wednesday, Friday class at 9 a.m., then at 10 a.m., they are scheduled for their co-rec. And so if it's me, I just pop right over to the computer lab. And a lot of times it'll be even a continuation on. If we're doing an assessment, on Friday, then we'll go over the review in class. They get to be a pretty tight group since we cap this at 22. A little less tight now that we have to leave computer space and all that jazz. And I did say I'd talk about the Zoom too, but typically we have kind of just organic steady groups that rise out of this, that they kind of, because we're in with these math pathways and we're small, they're seeing these other students and, some of they're on these same degree tracks. And so, for instance, a lot of times like our nursing students will kind of all find each other and because they're all taking free nursing together. And so they'll kind of find each other and sit by each other, and then they kind of just form this organic study group. So it's pretty cool. And as an instructor, you really get to know these students really well. My background is in elementary. My bachelor's is in elementary ed, and I just really, really dig the relationship part of this. My elementary kiddos, like I could look at, they didn't have to put their names on papers. I could look at their problem solving couple, weeks, months in, and I would know who it was. It's the same with my students that I have in the co-rec. We just really it's a tight knit group and get to know each other. So if you're thinking about those academic success skills, whole other discussion. But I mean, if it's really, it's that collaboration, it's that communication, it's that tight knit group. And I think these at-risk students, sometimes just the sense of community and the encouragement of teaching them how to have that grit and perseverance, and then seeing that sometimes in a peer plays a really big role in even just the non-academic aspect of this class. So it's pretty cool. This semester has been a little bit more challenging, as well last semester too, with students getting quarantined. So we have ran, we've all done it a little differently. Personally, in the fall, I would run Zoom. And so I just take my laptop with me to the classroom, and we would have, I would put the students in breakout rooms on Zoom. So that way that wasn't, super disturbing with sound on and everything else. And so we really did, we ran them, and we have been, Oklahoma, we have been face-to-face our institution has not closed since last spring. So we have had a lot of students quarantined. We have had a lot of instructors quarantined. It's kind of the Dr. Seuss of I will teach you here, I'll teach you there, I'll teach you anywhere. But we have been face to face. So, but we have been running them on Zoom, and that has worked well too. Just like I said, I've really found putting them in breakout rooms, systematically going in and checking on them and seeing how they're doing. And they can share their screen that way if they're working on Hawks. If I'm doing and we've actually been Zooming all of our courses as well. So that's just kind of become one of the things that we've done. So if I'm doing something in class, then I'm just running Zoom and the video and they're there. So if you guys have questions about that, it's been kind of crazy, but we have done it, and it's where students are learning. So how do you grade the CoRec? The CoRec is a pass-fail. So it's non-credit bearing. It does tie with the credit bearing. And we kind of learned that was the best plan for us, is that, and we are very clear about that you have to pass the credit bearing to pass the CoRec. And so we all kind of grade a little bit different in that CoRec. But most of us have some sort of percentage that looks like a attendance percentage versus completion of assignments. And so those percentages are all a little different. Mine is a third attendance, a third credit bearing assignments. So if it's they're stat assignments on Hawks, and then a third, they're integrated review. So I just weight them 100, 300 out of 300 points. But we did need to make sure, we did have a couple of students that would maybe complete all their assignments, and maybe they were there every single time, and then we're like completely failing their test. That doesn't happen very often. It was kind of a nuance, but completely failing their test in the credit bearing. And usually, to be honest, what was happening is they usually were having somebody else do their Hawks assignments, not in the CoRec, but they were in the dorms or something. And so they were looking pretty good in their CoRec, just point wise, but then weren't passing anything in their credit bearing. So we made that change to make sure that those tie together, because we didn't want those students clearing their deficiency and then having to retake the next semester without that CoRec support. That was not a good plan. How many students do you have in the course? So we talked about that. It is a different syllabus. I'm happy to share a syllabi for any of the courses that we have, but it's not magical. It basically just talks about our attendance policy, and it does, talk about pass-fail and making sure students understand that those courses are tied together. Attendance is an issue. As we know, those at-risk students are oftentimes the students that just don't have, with an open enrollment policy, we get students from all walks of life. And I used to say, like, hey, well, if you're going to go to work, then you should, if you feel good enough to go to work, then you should go in and come to class, then found out very quickly that I think that these are the students that sometimes aren't holding down jobs because it's the work ethic or just the practice of showing up continually is questionable at best. And so we do have a pretty robust attendance policy for our math classes and also for our language arts classes. This is for all of our developmental ed. And so we have the ability to, after seven absences, then we can assign students an AW, which is an academic withdrawal. So they don't receive an F on their transcript. They receive an AW, which doesn't hit their GPA. It does hit their financial aid. But we kind of put that in place for students that, we all have those students that enroll, maybe have never been in college, enroll, and then just stop coming and assuming it's just going to drop off and don't realize that they're, basically, if they ever come back, we'll have this semester full of Fs on their transcript. They don't realize that. And it gave us a little bit of, a little bit of backing as far as telling the students, like, hey, if you get to that number 7, then, and 7's just kind of a magical number, but and there's some grace in that, obviously, but they know that we're monitoring attendance. So we do really monitor attendance in those CoRecs, and really more than anything, once again, academic success skills. trying to teach students that, if you are here, I mean, just trying to really work on habits. If you are here and you're engaging in the content, you're engaging with me, you're engaging with your peers, you're asking questions, you're working on Hawks and you're working to learn and watching the videos, engagement looks like a lot of different ways. We talk about that early in the semester, then you're probably going to pass. And that attendance policy has been pretty important and pretty helpful as far as success. So online co-recs. So we have our face-to-face, we have our Zoom co-recs. So now we have online co-recs, and we had piloted our online courses summer of 19 into fall of 19. And so luckily we had all those taught. And then of course, summer 2020, we were planning on piloting anyways, but we got to pilot all 4 of our pathways because we were all online for the summer. And but summer is always a good time to pilot, a little smaller and a little bit of different population of students. So I was the one that piloted them, and we had some pretty good success. So thinking about what works. Luckily, we had several semesters, several years of our face-to-face co-recs, and so an instructor friend of mine and I just sat down and we really looked and said, okay, what works? What do we know? What are the important aspects of our co-recs? We're getting students through. I have that data in just a second, but we're getting students through. We have the quantitative and qualitative data to know that. Then how does that look like? How does that look different for an online? And so what are some different ways that we can still have those pieces? How do we still have engagement? How do we still have communication? How do we still have that sense of community? And that accountability is such a huge part of the co-rec, that relationship aspect of those students are coming in like, hey, how'd it go? How was your weekend? Like I said, we know each other. And there's just accountability in that. It's a sense of belonging that a lot of our students really need. And so how do we still do that with online? That is the question, right? So it's still pass fail. And I've already talked to you a little bit about how that I do the attendance, the Hawks assignments, Hawks review assignments. So attendance was really kind of the biggest thing. How do you do attendance for an online class? And of course I can look to see if they've engaged in Hawks. I can run all sorts of reports if they've, last time they enrolled or, were logged into our LMS. But the biggest thing for me is I just had them, they have to initiate communication with me once a week. And it's kind of sad. Like I send them a little email like, hey, remember it's your job, and so it's as easy as them just responding to the email. And a lot of times if I, as the semester goes on, if I had talked to the student on the phone or via Zoom, then all of that counts. But basically we have to communicate some way, shape, or form during the week, every single week. And so at the very beginning of the semester, I'm pretty intrusive about it. Like, obviously I know what their assignments are and gotta love Hawks and all their reports. But I really will. I'll have it pulled up here and I'll just, say like, hey, well, notice you haven't, got a chance to start in chapter 2, what's, anything daunting about that, and I'll even kind of like add in a little bit about like, I think you'll really like this aspect of chapter 2. I try to keep it pretty, my emails are pretty chatty, not really chatty in nature, but pretty, not really non-professional, but I don't know what would be the good word for it. But I really try to make it kind of a friendly email, but really just kind of like, hey, checking on you. How is it really going? And do you have any questions? And, not just vague, but I really try, especially the first couple of weeks of the semester, to really check and see, making sure those students are engaging. And then if I know that there's going to be some aspects they have questions on, like, hey, have you got on and taken your quiz yet? Were you able to find the notes under content, or those kinds of like frequently asked question things. So that has really worked well. Seems super easy. It's a lot of emails, But it really, it has seemed to work well for students. And what it has done is it's opened up, and we have some discussion posts and some other things that I do where they're communicating with each other. But as far as like really opening up that communication to me, to make me accessible, then that has worked well. And that way they're a lot more likely to email me with a question. They're a lot more likely to, when they're stuck, send me a screenshot of the question that they're stuck on. And so, and then for tutoring, I just, I have a Google form, and here I'll just click on it real quick. But I just have them, let's see, I've got one in there right now, request tutoring. And so this is just a way that they can, so if I'm teaching the correct tutoring is through me. We do have some other tutoring options on our campus, and sometimes those students, if they're needing a lot, then I'll give up that option. And sometimes somebody else may be better. They may want a peer, and that may be just a lot less daunting of a experience than your instructor. And so there we have other options, but I don't meet with them. We typically meet via Zoom. And if I've got a couple, I have online office hours, but if I have a couple of students, I'll put them in breakout rooms, hop around. A lot of times I'll kind of schedule it where if I've got a group of students that all need help, we'll all just kind of convene via Zoom. One of the things I found super helpful, because they do fill our online classes to 30 students for our co-recs, and then 60 for the non-developmental. So that ends up being a lot of students. So what I have found helpful is that I don't meet with them for tutoring unless they've spent 30 minutes and learned and 30 minutes in practice. And I'm pretty clear about the fact that I'm going to go back and check that and see, once again, love those Hawks reports. And so that has really helped, that a lot of times they will find that they don't need, once they've spent time, they freak out, it'll be at 11 p.m. email, and they're freaking out about, hi, Brian.
Hey, I just wanted to pop in real quick and just give a quick 5-minute warning and see if you wanted to jump to any Q&As, or up to you.
Yeah, I'm going to show one more slide because I think I'm pretty much done.
Sounds great.
So, but yeah, a lot of times that has really helped them, just knowing that, like, use the support you have in place. That is once again, an academic success skill. So, so I'm not going to go through these in detail. I want to get to some questions, but we know that, removing that math hurdle, we have some great qualitative data from our students. We know this process is working, and for a variety of different types of students and different paths of life. And so it makes it rewarding, although challenging at times with all of those different challenges. This guy's quite a character. He was one of Melissa's. When she presents, she usually has a little story about him, but he's an engineer now. He just graduated with his engineering degree. So I'm going to pop over here and show you, we have our 1920 data. So we're able to get 79% was our last, but between 70 and 80% students completed through their college level math in one semester. And so, or within that first year, sometimes they have to take it the second semester. And so that's pretty awesome. So that's why we do what we do. So there's my information. You are more than welcome to call or email if you have specific questions past then. Brian, I will take a couple of questions if there are any.
Yeah, I got 2 questions right here, actually, so I'll quickly jump into those. First question is, what do students in the co-rec courses typically struggle with the most? And the person who provided asked a couple questions. Was it typically like soft skills required for success in the college classroom, or is it keeping up with the credit level content, or maybe something else there?
Can I say all of the above? Yes, I mean, I'm sure I'm talking to a group of educators that work with at-risk students and those transitional students. So a lot of times that co-rec is working on soft skills, just being able to, we work with a lot of students that don't feel like they are worthy, if you will, that they are, that they don't have a huge cheering section at home for them. They don't feel like they have the skills to be here. And they're just trying to, create a better life for themselves or do something, a lot of first-gen students. And so a lot of times, yeah, just working on them being confident enough to be able to work in a group collaboratively, ask questions professionally, send an email that, articulates what they want to. But we do have some students that come in with some pretty big deficits. And so it is also working on that content. I will say that all of us, especially if you get to teach your own co-rec, you kind of know when those hurdles are going to come as you're looking at your, what sections are going to be difficult, what concepts are going to be difficult. And so we do our best to really kind of head that off, whether it's not previewing it. I don't think I said that, but a lot of times with me, I know that if I'm going to teach something that I know is going to be difficult on Friday, then I will pre-teach it on Wednesday to my co-rec. And really just to kind of alleviate fear, anxiety, and just be like, hey, you guys kind of have this, I know I'm going to have to probably reteach it several different times to them. And so, yeah, that's kind of a multifaceted question, but yes, all of those things in the co-rec.
Definitely. We appreciate that response. And since it was a multi-step question, since we did just run out of our time, so I wanted to thank you, Emily. That was a great presentation, and thank you for sharing all that valuable information to everyone here in attendance today. So everyone, all the attendees that are still here, I'm going to launch a quick 3-question poll just to help us out, gauge the presentation, gauge your experiences throughout the IES conference today. So I'm going to pull that right now. It probably won't take you more than 30 seconds to a minute to complete. So we appreciate your responses here. And then just some other information. The next concurrent sessions are going to begin at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time today. You can view the chat for the session meeting room links or access the conference website for a complete list of concurrent sessions and their descriptions. And while visiting the conference website, don't forget to swing by our exhibit hall to talk to one of our Hawks representatives. I'm going to paste in the links for the chat right now. And thank you, Emily, and thank you everyone who was able to attend today.
Thank you, guys. Good luck. Stay safe.